So when I was coming up, there was a popular cereal where the motto was "Silly Rabbit, tricks are for kids." And sad to say that nowadays, in my adult age, I am coming to find that we are still running into silly rabbits. We still have silly rabbits that are still out here on the loose, that are free, they are wild, they are a menace to society. So what we're going to talk about today is what I have termed the silly rabbit syndrome. So if you hear it anywhere else, then it's my term that I just came up with, silly rabbit syndrome. So there are certain traits of the silly rabbit syndrome that I have noticed that most of these silly rabbits or pretty much all of these silly rabbits will have. So the first trait that we'll talk about is the silly rabbits are usually immature. They don't have a sense of emotional maturity. They don't have a sense of societal maturity. They don't have a sense of now that's not saying that they are not smart as far as book smart. Some of them may have book smarts because a lot of the times book smarts is remembering what you were told. So, which that's not knocking anybody being smart, because I mean, of course, you need smart. It's just the point of balancing it. But silly rabbits don't know how to balance. So, most silly rabbits, they are very immature. They don't have emotional maturity. They don't have relational maturity, spiritual maturity. They're just lacking in the maturity, department. So that's going to be your first trait that you will definitely notice, is that the silly rabbits dealing with the silly rabbit syndrome will be immature. Well, let's go back and describe what exactly is the silly rabbit syndrome. The silly rabbit syndrome is those who are walking around trying to play silly games and honestly believing that their silly tricks are working. They believe that they're working, and they are not aware that you are aware that they're playing silly games. They're playing silly games using silly tricks, and they actually believe that their silly tricks are working. They actually think that you are the silly one. Isn't that fun? People with the silly rabbit syndrome actually think that you are the silly one. So joke's on you, silly rabbit. Okay, so now let's go back to the traits again. So the first one we already went over and said that the silly rabbits will always be immature in pretty much every state of the word, every form of the word immaturity. They will embody that. The second trait, which I mean you will notice that all of these traits they all kind of are under the umbrella of immaturity, but it manifests in different ways. So that's why we're going to go over each and every one of them, but they all are really under the umbrella of immaturity. And now, mind you, these are adults that we're talking about, so that's why it's so important, because if I just tell you these traits without putting it in the context that we're talking about adults, then they seem childish, so you may think that we're talking about a child or like a teenager, but no, but we're talking about adults. We are talking about people that are stunted in their mental growth, in their mental expansion. So the first trait we said was immaturity. The second trait, these silly rabbit, the people with silly rabbit syndrome are also suffering from simple mindedness. They are very simple minded. As you know, immature people often are simple minded. They don't know how to look at the full scope of a thing. They don't know how to broaden their perspective. They don't understand like cause and effect. They don't realize that that this is why that's happening. They just kind of look at the fact that that's happening. They're very small. The next trait is going to be that people suffering from silly rabbit syndrome are delusional. They live in Delululand. And when I say delusional, I'm meaning as far as they actually think that, like, they believe their lies, and they think that you believe their lies too. They believe that what they are saying and doing is actually coming off as authentic. They actually believe that. They don't understand or even recognize that someone with a bigger vision can actually see that. Like they can't fathom that because they think that they're smart. So they are delusional. And so I mentioned the word lie because lie usually comes with delusional, but the silly rabbit syndrome people they're also liars. They lie about lying. They lie to themselves, which is the most important thing. They lie to themselves. Like I said before, they believe their lies, so they believe that you believe their lie. They don't understand. They are so delusional and such liars that sometimes they will convince themselves that a loss is actually a win. They will convince themselves that, something, that they are saying or doing is actually affecting, the person that they wanted to affect. Like they believe that it's actually affecting them for whatever reason, which it could be a myriad of reasons. They just could not want to admit that, that person is not even paying attention to them. They could just not want to, they basically just want to keep that person's name in their mouth. They want to keep that person on their brain, so they have to have a reason to bring that person up. And the only reason that someone with the silly rabbit syndrome can think of to bring said person's name up is to lie about it and be delusional about their lie. So the silly rabbit syndrome society, I just feel like that, we need to build a community for them all, let them kind of, be out close to the woods so they can, play with the deers and the squirrels and all of that, and so they can have something to do, because that's basically what it is. They clearly have nothing else to do, and on the aspect of delusion, that they become so delusional that they pretty much become obsessed with the subject of their delusion. Like they become obsessed with it. They become so obsessed with it because they have to make it fit their narrative. They have to, in whatever delusional way, in whatever small-minded way, in whatever immature way, in whatever, non-truthful way, they have to make it fit. So whatever they got to do to make it fit, they are dedicated to making it fit. And so I guess that's another thing that's one positive trait that we can add to their syndrome, is that they are dedicated to being, they are loud and proud. They wear, silly rabbit t-shirts. They have badges, I guess they have badges where they can recognize each other because they seem to run in groups. So I guess they must have some kind of secret handshake or badges or something to where they can recognize another person with the silly rabbit syndrome. But these are menaces to society. And like I said, I just, maybe we need to, make America great again and build a community where they're close by the woods and away from regular society, because they are a menace to society. And the sad thing is, some of these people suffering from silly rabbit syndrome hold high positions. So the average, normal thinking person, their livelihood may lie within the hands of someone with the silly rabbit syndrome. How wild is that? Your livelihood could lie within the hands of someone with the silly rabbit syndrome. That is crazy to me. That is crazy. But like I said, that you may find them running in groups because they do like to group up with other, members of that suffer from the same disorder. They like to kind of group up, and I guess that makes their delusion and their lies and their immaturity, like they co-sign it. They co-sign all of the behaviors for each other, and that makes them feel as though the behaviors are proper. Because like I said, some may be textbook smart, so they kind of know how to, maneuver, but to a certain extent. So if they have other silly rabbit syndrome people to co-sign their, these behaviors and these traits that are absolutely a menace to society, then they feel like that is making it okay. Because no one has told them otherwise. No one has called them out. Well, of course no one is going to call you out because you're dealing with people with the same syndrome as you. They don't know any better. The Bible called these people, they are, we are dealing with, people who are practicing and following. And I hope I'm using that right. But this is in fact a menace to society. This is I'm not sure if many people are aware of this syndrome, but yes, there is a such thing. You just learned today. You were today years old when you found out about the silly rabbit syndrome that is running rampant around this world. It's just running rampant and it's unchecked. We must be mindful. We must be on alert. And we must check these with the ciliary rabbit syndrome. Well, until next time, guys, and as the saying goes, stay woke.